Thank you, Steve, and I appreciate the opportunity to be with you, and thank you for coming. For some of you, it was probably difficult today to come back to the funeral home, but you're doing it for a reason, and that is to remember somebody that you care about very, very much. When Steve was talking just a minute ago, he didn't say anything about this, but he had his father-in-law die quite suddenly within the last 6 months. So we all have loss. 33 years I've been hearing stories from people talking about their losses, those people that they loved who died. And I was sitting with my wife a few weeks ago and I said, it's interesting. I've heard all of these stories and I've been introduced to these people who I will never have a chance to meet. And beautiful stories. So I think to myself, it's very difficult to go through the grief process, but it's also very difficult to do the right things, the things that you should do. Because the things that we should do are things that are very, very painful. And so people have said in my office, and they've said, Dr. Canine, I don't like this. I don't want to do this. Don't you have a pill? Don't you have something I can take to get rid of this? How long is this going to take? And I have one standard answer, one standard response. And here it is. And this is what I'm going to talk about for just a few minutes. Be patient and do what's right. Two things. Be patient and do what's right. This is the most adverse time in anyone's life when you have someone that you love die. And in fact, it's been researched and validated that it's more difficult to lose somebody that you love and care about deeply than it is to find out that you are going to die. Imagine that. Be patient and do what's right. There was a man by the name of John Kennedy Toole. At the age of 16, he wrote a novel. It was called Neon Bible. It wasn't a bestseller, but it got a lot of attention, and especially because it was written by a 16-year-old. He was born in New Orleans. He taught college at Harper College in New York. In his 20s, he started working on another novel. This one was titled A Confederacy of Dunces. He spent 3 or 4 years writing this novel. When he was completed, he took it to Simon & Schuster and he said, here, I'd like for you to publish this. And they looked at it and they said, well, we like it, but, it needs some revisions. And they gave it back to him and he went back for another year and worked on it, finished it, took it back to New York, Simon & Schuster, and said, here it is. And they said, well, we still like it, but there needs to be more revisions. He took it back home and worked on it for another year or two, took it back to them. They said, no, we're just not going to publish it. At the age of 31, on March 31st, 1969, John Kennedy Toole took his life, with his manuscript still unpublished. His mother, realizing his dedication to this body of work, his mother took the manuscript and basically went to every publisher in New York and finally found someone to publish A Confederacy of Dunces. And in 1981, the book won the Pulitzer Prize for the best fiction in the world. Wouldn't you have liked to said to John Kennedy Toole, be patient? You see, with God, he's in an eternal dimension, and he doesn't operate out of space-time. Space-time, this space-time dimension is what causes us to look forward and to look backward and sometimes be totally focused on the present. But when it comes to God and what he says for us to do, it's simply be patient. Be patient. There's no time with me. Be patient. You've heard it. This moment will too pass. Be patient. And in fact, in Romans chapter 5, if you look it up, you'll see that patience, when it has endurance, and you know what endurance is? It's courage that's stretched. I like that because that's what the grief process is. You got to be courageous to go through this. and it stretches you out. But if you're patient with endurance, it leads to what? Anybody know? Hope. Look it up. You want hope this holiday season? You got to begin with patience. Be patient. Sometimes people get on my nerves. I flew in this morning, came into Little Rock and had a time in Atlanta for about an hour. And I just looked around at one point and I thought, what is this? What kind of world are we living in? And this is never more acute than when a person is grieving. And so part of being patient is being patient with other people. I remember the lady that had a best friend, and she was married. Her best friend wasn't married, and her husband died. And when he died, her best friend was on a cruise. And when she got back, she came over to the house very quickly and said, "I'm so sorry to hear about your husband, and I know just how you feel because while I was gone on the cruise, my dog died." My friend said she wanted to double up her fist and just punch her. People don't know what to say, so you have to be patient with them. You have to forgive them. You have to give them the benefit of the doubt. You have to be patient with yourself. Have you done any crying recently? You ever cried and think, I'm not going to stop crying? That's a time to be patient with yourself, which, by the way, January 10th, 1984, a long time ago, front page in the Detroit Free Press, Dr. William Fry brought 400 people into a laboratory, had them peel an onion. And when the participants cried, they took the tears, put the tears under a microscope, and they found nothing but water and salt. Then he took the 400 participants and brought them into a movie theater, had them watch 2 sad movies where people died. And when they cried, he took the tears, put the tears under a microscope, and he found water, salt, and a toxic enzyme by the name of enkephalin. It's a member of the endorphin family. And when a person is sad, the brain kicks in and produces enkephalin. It has an opiate effect upon the body. And then it's removed from the body as waste by the individual crying. Dr. Fry's conclusion with this research, which is recorded in his book, The Mystery of Tears, he says that if an individual does not cry over a period of time, enkephalin will remain in the body and possibly build up to the point of causing biological or physiological harm. There you have it. Some of you smiling at me, aren't you? You know you're healthy because you're crying. That's what you're supposed to do. Be patient with yourself. Some days it's going to be overwhelming. Some days you're going to have all of those environmental cues out there. They're going to trigger thoughts of that loved one and missing him so much or missing her so much. Be patient with yourself. Be patient with others. Let's take the second half of this and do what's right. You know, a lot of people challenge me on this and they say, Dr. Canine, isn't grief something that there's no right or wrong? I'm sorry, that's not true. In fact, we have a ton of research going on right now in the area of grief. One of my dearest friends and colleagues, Dr. William Warden, taught at Harvard for 25 years, has conducted all kinds of research. 10 years the government paid him to do research project on grief out of Massachusetts General Hospital. No, there are some things that we need to do in terms of healthy grief. There are some things we need to do that are just simply right, and we need to do them. And especially during this holiday season, we have an opportunity to do them. For example, this is the time when you should be talking about your loved one. Son dies, daughter dies, husband dies, grandpa dies. Let's tell the stories. The legacy needs to go on. You know, we need to carry the torch, and so we tell the stories, and many of them cause us to laugh, many of them cause us to cry, but that brings in Ecclesiastes chapter 3 and the balance we're supposed to have in life, a time to laugh and a time to mourn. After my father's death, I've had 2 major deaths in my life, an infant daughter and my father. And when my father died, by the way, my father was a Baptist preacher. I can say that in Arkansas because there's a few Baptist churches here. But when my father died, the first Thanksgiving after my father's death, we all wrote stories of my dad. And we came together Thanksgiving. We sat around the Thanksgiving table and we read our stories about my father. He was a very good minister and very colorful man. It was the right thing to do. You know, don't make this the elephant in the middle of the room. Well, I don't want to talk about Grandpa because somebody's going to cry. Well, you need to talk about Grandpa, and if somebody cries, everybody needs to sing hallelujah. It's great. Those are tears of love. Please, are you listening? Do do not make any apologies for your tears. People have said to me, I go back to work and I break down and I start to cry and I feel so bad. Oh my goodness, don't feel bad. Those are tears of love. And stop and through the tears say, these are tears of love. I loved him very much. I loved her very much. It's the right thing to do. What are some other right things to do? Maybe have a plate at the table that's empty and a chair that's empty. Maybe to have a candle at the table. Maybe to have a big ornament on the tree that has his or her picture in it. Maybe you can't have Christmas this year, but maybe you can find some creative way to bring that loved one into Christmas. You can't have it because he's not here. You can't have it because she's not here. Well, it's up to you to bring them into Christmas. You will always have a relationship with that person. They will always be a part of your life and a part of your family. So bring them into this holiday season. So a lady sits in my office and she says, I cannot have Christmas. Large Catholic family, a lot of grandkids. She says, I just can't do it. They come over at 8 o'clock for breakfast. I have to fix breakfast, then we open presents. I can't do it without Papa. Grandpa died. I said, do you want to have them all over for Christmas? She said, yes. Well, I can't do it. I said, well, you got to figure this out. You have to do it. So I waited. After the holiday season, she came in, and I couldn't wait for her to come in. I looked at her and I said, hey, did you have Christmas at your house? She said, I did. I said, really? You kept the tradition? She says, no. Didn't do it like I always did it. I said, how'd you do it? She said, well, everybody came over, 5, 6, 7 cars, drove up at 8 o'clock on Christmas Day. She said, I met them at the front door, and I waved to them all, and I said, don't get out of your cars. Stay in your car. She said, I went and got my coat on. I got in my car, rolled down the window, started down the road, told them all to follow me. She said, we had a parade all the way out to You're exactly right. All the way out to the cemetery. They parked the cars. They made a circle around Papa's grave, and they sang songs, they told stories, and they laughed, and they cried. And you know what she told me? She said, it's one of the best Christmases we've ever had. We came back to the house, and we talked about Papa, and he was a part of everything. You see, you can do that. Be patient with yourself and do what's right. Think of some things that you can do. Buy a book. Put in the front of the book, in loving memory of, and put the name of the person and take it to the library. If you entertain over the holiday season, hang a stocking for that person on the mantle. And when people come into your home, take them over to the mantle and say, this is Mom's stocking. This is Dad's stocking. This is Jimmy's stocking. And tell a story about Jimmy. And then when you're done, whoever you're talking to, ask them to make a financial contribution to the stocking. And then when it's all said and done, take the money and give it to charity in memory and honor of your loved one. All kinds of things that you can do. I hope that you'll think about. Be patient and do what's right. Now I want to add one other thing before I close. I want to say to you, be patient and do what's right because somebody is watching. That's right. Somebody is watching. You might say, well, God's watching. Well, certainly God's watching, but there are some other people that are watching too. When a mother says to me, I don't want the children to see me cry, and so I go into the closet or I go into the bedroom or I get away from the children so I can cry so they won't see it. I say to that mother, unhealthy. Children need to see healthy grief. They need to see adults cry because they've lost love. They need to see that adults get better. Somebody's watching. So a little boy, 7, 8 years old, comes to me. He really doesn't have a father. Grandfather is his father. Not his biological father, but the father who raised him. So he's sitting there and I say, tell me about Grandpa, because Grandpa has died. And he says, well, Grandpa, was like my father, and he took me to Detroit Tiger games and Detroit Lion games and to basketball games. He took me fishing, and he just did a lot of things with me all the time. I thought, fantastic. And during the course of my counseling with him, he started to tell me about his bedroom and all the superheroes in his bedroom. He had superhero wallpaper, and he had superhero models, and he had superhero sheets on his bed. And I thought, okay, I'm going to be a good counselor. He loves superheroes. Grandpa was like his real-life superhero. I'm going to bring them both together, and he'll have an understanding of why he's missing Grandpa so much. So I looked at him, and I said, okay, Grandpa was a great grandpa, and you love superheroes. Tell me, who is your real-life superhero? He didn't hesitate. He looked at me and said, Grandma. I said, Grandma? Why Grandma? And once again, he didn't hesitate. He looked at me and he said, because she misses Grandpa and she has a broken heart, but she still asks me over to her house and bakes me cookies and gives me hugs. Out of the mouth of babes. Be patient and do what's right, because somebody is watching. I pray that even in the midst of your hurt and pain, that this will be a God-blessed holiday season for you.